thank you for having me today. So, as Claire said, my name's David. I work in Thales. So what I'm going to do today is just go through very briefly a bit about what we do in Thales, a little bit about my own career experience, and hopefully some things that might be useful. And then towards the end, as Claire said, a bit about just general tips for, not in any way specific to Thales, but just job applications generally. I haven't got an enormous number of slides, so I'm hoping at the end I've got a bit of time for people to grill me, ask questions, and we can hopefully make it a bit more interactive. So on the way here, I was actually thinking about the last one of these that I did, which I think was 2 years ago at Southampton. The reason it's stuck in my mind is because I got similar slides. I said to the audience, well, have you any questions? And one guy put his hand up, he said, can you tell me about the philosophical implications of quantum mechanics? And I said, well, okay. So I was expecting to be asked how much you get paid, what I spent my time doing. So I kind of just wanted to bear in mind it's 20 years since I've done it and stuff. So I kind of waffled my way through it a bit. Got to the end, he came to see me afterwards. I said, well, why did you ask me that? And he said, it's my essay question's got to be in tomorrow morning. So at least I was perhaps of some use on that occasion. Anyway, so just a little bit about me. So I did a physics degree a long time ago, probably to figure it out. After that, I went to work for the UK Institute of Defence for a bit, a couple of years, where I did theoretical modelling of acoustic submarine signatures. So in other words, we try to make the whole idea of submarines stealth and hard to detect. So what I was trying to do was theoretically predict how we could make submarines quieter, so that they're more difficult for the university teams to find out what they are. So I did that for a couple of years, and I went to work for Thales, which you've got in ever since. My career, so what's that, 20 odd years, my career's been a mix of quite a lot of different things, but mostly algorithms, sensors, and signal processing, and a bit of sort of systems engineering. My main specialism, if I have one, is around submarines going on, but I also do bits of work, sort of that actually sort of bit with Alistair Kerry's group here at Holloway on quantum algorithms and quantum computing, and I've got a sort of bit of a management involvement as much as I need a research group of 7 scientists, again specialising in sensors and signal processing type work. So I don't want this presentation to be so much about Thales, but just very briefly, that's our mission statement. It's perhaps a bit verbose, but in a nutshell, what we do is we develop cutting-edge technology, and we bring that to aerospace, defence, and security markets. So that's what we're here for. We're here to develop new technologies, build those into products and solutions that then go on to be used often by UK government customers, such as Ministry of Defence, for mostly defence and security. Just the numbers, again, very briefly. So worldwide, we're a bit over 80,000 people, so quite a big company. In the UK, about 6,500, and worldwide, we do about 20 billion euros worth of work every year, about 2 or 3 of that, so 2 or 3 billion of that in the UK. So that's just very briefly to give you an idea of the size of the company that we are. The markets that we work in Quite a lot of people tend to think that Thales is just a defence company, which is actually not true. So globally, defence is only about half of what we do, and the other half is a mix of increases the amount of cyber digital work, so cyber around security for networks, and within that do an awful lot of work to things like security for financial transactions and stuff like that. And also on that side of business, a lot of our work now is around digital identity and biometrics, which are becoming more important. And then the other part is aerospace, so do a lot of work providing things like sensors and communications for military and civil aircraft, as well as air traffic management. So a lot of the air traffic control solutions that use around the world are based on Thales technology. So yeah, I'm going to skip over this bit because this is quite detailed. So what I really want to get to is just a little bit about. So I work in the research and technology part of the company. What we are there to do is to develop those next generation technologies which are going to find their way into our future products and services. So quite a lot of the work that I'm doing will start life in perhaps a university research lab, and part of my job is to try and bring that technology from that kind of level of readiness to something that can actually be deployed in something which a customer can use. Some of the areas that we work in, I'll just pick out a couple of these. So as I've already mentioned, I do quite a lot of work in quantum technology. Some of that is in quantum algorithms, which is algorithms that will run on quantum computer. Some of it's around quantum sensors, which is kind of novel sensor technologies which provide higher levels of sensitivity and new capabilities that we can do using sensors based on Haskell physics. Unsurprisingly, AI is everywhere now, so that's a really important area of work for us. And the other one that I'll mention is kind of own computer interface. So we do quite a lot of work now, which is looking at how humans and autonomous systems can best work together. So if you've got a system which comprises of human operators working alongside systems which have got a high degree of autonomy, in other words, they can make decisions to do things themselves, how do you best make use of that combination to deliver what the customer needs? So that is, in a nutshell, that's just a short overview of what the research and technology are currently is, which is quite a lot of work. So on to careers. So just to give you an idea of what I do on a daily basis. So these are in no particular order. Well, I spend quite a lot of time talking to customers and stakeholders to find out what they need and servicing the technologies that we're doing. Probably 2/3 of my time still, I'm happy to say, is still consumed doing technical work. So although I've got a management position, actually, I'm still managing technical person, even though I'm some 20 odd years into my career, which is something that I'm really happy about. So within that, I'm still doing quite a lot of mathematics, modeling, development algorithms. When it's not about developing algorithms, there's things like Python, I'm sure you're familiar with. And then there's the kind of university side of everything with academia and where we're based. So as Claire mentioned, we're just outside Reading, it's Green Park. It's kind of a blend of business park and nature reserve. So we're actually on the lake right next to the office, which they like to play when it's nice and sunny. It's quite a nice option. Just go and get a fresh air. Okay, so this is just some tips on applying for, I think these are pretty much universally applicable to any job that you like to think about. It's in no way specific to Thales. But the reason I put these bullet points together is I've been involved in graduate interviewing for 15 or 20 years now, and it's still surprises me some of the things that people get wrong. So what I'm trying to do here is help you to not get those things wrong. And some of them might seem obvious, but clearly not that obvious because some people still don't do them. So the first one is make sure that you have researched the company that you are applying for, and you've got some idea why you want to join. So quite often when I go to the interview, the first question I'll ask is, okay, so what do you know about Thales? And it may seem the number of times asked the question, and the answer has been, well, I think it's like, well, okay, so have a look on the website for 10 minutes the night before the interview and just make sure you know about the company. Most of the interviews that I do are the technical interviews. So, and part of that is that we ask the candidates some technical questions, and that is not intended to be unpleasant or intimidating or those catch you out, but you just want to understand how well you think through a problem that you probably haven't seen before. So when you go to a technical interview, then be prepared to those and sort of related to that, try not to be tempted to give joke answers to questions. My pet hate is when people say, "Oh, I didn't do this in lectures," because what I want to find out about is your capacity to problem solve. I'm not so interested in whether or not you can regurgitate Maxwell's equations or second or thermodynamics, or whatever it might be. Quite a lot of employers now ask applicants to do a presentation at some stage in your selection process. So if you are asked to do that, then try and pick a subject that you like, and then you know a bit about it, so it just makes it much easier. And again, if you do get asked us to do a presentation, if it's a subject you're really enthusiastic about, you know a bit about, it's much lighter to go better. So the next one is about solved questions. So quite a lot of companies do things called competency-based interviews, which is kind of around thinking back to examples of things that you've done in the past, and so describing a particular situation. So have a bit of a think about what some answers for those kind of questions might have been. Usually those can be things with studies or extracurricular activities. Try to be positive, enthusiastic. Nobody wants to be really pessimistic as well. And if a question that you're asking me to is difficult, then often the interviewer will try to guide you through the question. So if that comes to pass, then just let it happen. And I've been doing interviews for 15 or 20 years now. I still get a little bit nervous doing it. So it's absolutely fine to be nervous going into an interview. just trying to channel that energy constructively. And finally, it's good to have a couple of questions prepared, because I will always ask, when everyone's been interviewed at the end, I will always ask if they've got questions about what I do at the company. So try to have a couple of questions prepared. Ideally not ones that you can find out looking at the company website in a very short period of time. So having said that, that might sound a bit unpleasant and intimidating. It's really not intended to be. I've gone into an interview today, it's just a hard time. I just want to find out if they're going to be able to do the job. Okay. So the next few slides are just tips on CVs and cover letters. And again, some of this is drawn from my own experience as assessor over the last few years. So is everybody clear about, I think this might be obvious, is everybody clear about the difference between CV and covering letters? Yeah, okay, that's good. So the way I think of it is CV is where you set out, who you are, your experiences, your skills, your education, extracurricular activities, all that stuff. The covering letter is your opportunity to really be a little bit more personal and set out, link what's in your CV to the particular role that you are applying for. So your CV would generally be a little bit more generic, but your covering letter should be much more tailored to the job that you are applying for. So the CV is basically a piece of information about you. Key areas really being what your key skills are and your education history. And employment, if you have any things like internships, really, really important and always help on CV. Last week I was going through a whole bunch of CVs, and I'll be honest, it's not a particularly pleasant task. It's very time consuming. You're trying to pick out information from a huge amount of documentation. So what you really need to try and achieve in the CV is try to make that information stand out as clear as possible and to make it as brief and concise. So it might sound a bit brutal, but if I get given a CV that's more than about 2.5 pages, I just won't read the rest of it because I just haven't got time to. So on applications that I looked at last week, the CV was 9 pages. It's just, I just have not got time to read through the 9 pages. It's excessive, however sort of brutal that might sound. And just on the CV, so what I tend to do with my CV is I tend to have a sort of fairly core CV with all the key information in. And then what I tend to do is modify that for different job applications to make it sort of tailored to what I'm applying for. But I use the same sort of common starting point for each one to make that easier and a bit less time consuming. So that's very briefly about CVs. Covering letters should be much more specific to the job that you're applying for. So it should be why you're applying for the role, why you think you're well suited to it, linking to what you said on your CV. So definitely, so whereas you might use the same CV or similar CV for different applications, it should definitely be a different covering letter for each application that you submit. And personally, I think a covering letter can be quite short. I think it can be 2 paragraphs. It definitely should be more than 1 page of A4. So some of this I think I've already mentioned. So I think the way that a lot of people structure a CV now, which I think works reasonably well, is to start off with a section covering your key skills. So what is it we bring to the role, your technical skills, programming, as well as what experience you have writing reports, presentations, anything like that. And then on to things like your employment and education history. So clearly, for your age, employment is going to be a huge amount, but education is obviously important, and but I'd still keep it reasonably terse. So, for example, I wouldn't list all your GCSEs. I would just put six GCSEs at grade 9, whatever it might be. In terms of how to lay out your CV, so I think there's just loads of stuff out there on the internet now on good practice for this. You want it to make it to be as concise and easy to read as possible. If it's really cluttered, it can be difficult for someone to pick up the information that they want. If it's too sparse, then it can look a bit bare. So go online and just look at some examples before you put CV together. So yeah, else have I not said here? Yeah, so again, I think probably the point just to lay was it's really worth thinking about the skills that you have and how those relate to the role that you're applying for. So, for example, if I was writing my CV now, my key skills would probably be things like signal processing, sonar about development, along with strong management skills, report writing, presentations, etc. So yeah, slide. Go back. So on your professional history, so this is more around again, sort of education. I think one thing that is worth noting is if you have got gaps in your CV for whatever reason, gaps in your studies, for example, then that's okay, but it's far better to explain that on the CV than hope that the employer won't notice, because they almost certainly will notice, and they'll probably want to know why. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to have gaps if you're taking a year out for whatever that might be, but it's much better to just explain why that is than to just leave it as a little question. And then the last part of the CV about further information. So this is really an opportunity to say anything else that you haven't said. So things that can be really impressive are any volunteering opportunities or community projects or travel or any stuff like that you've done and what you've learned from it. So I do bits of volunteering even at my stage in my career. I still actually learn quite a lot from that. So volunteering can be a really good thing to have on your CV. So a couple of letters to say this is really your opportunity to speak directly to the employer about why you want a job and what you bring to that specific role. So this can be a little bit more sort of like the CV. This is kind of really continuous prose as opposed to what's more like bullet points. So it's your opportunity to talk a bit more freely about who you are, why you're interested in the role, and what you bring to it. So link it to what's on the CV, but don't repeat too much what's on your CV because you don't really need to repeat material that's already there. Okay, so just final do's and don'ts, which again may sound a bit obvious. So it's a really good idea to have somebody read your cover letter and see before you submit them. Spelling and grammatical errors, they're not a deal breaker, but they don't really create a better impression, and they're very easy to remedy. So things like that, just having checked before you send them. If you're going to mention references in your CV, then please make sure that you've talked to your referees beforehand, so that you know they're happy to give you a reference. Because it's not great if you approach you for reference, they say, "Oh, asked." Keep all the information completely relevant to the role that you're applying for. Mentioned about keeping it concise. Some people include photos of the CVs. I don't really think there's a need for that unless it's not specifically requested. So that's probably not something that I would recommend. And try not to use too much jargon or acronyms that aren't obvious to people outside your immediate field. So if you are going to use acronyms, don't just assume that everybody will. And things like colours and images on these kind of documents probably not a good idea, because you don't know how it's going to come out when it's been processed in whatever way your potential employer might have done with it. Okay, so I think this is so this is not to do with applying for a job. This is got to do with just how you sort of hopefully forge a productive, satisfying career when you've got your first job. And again, this is based on my sort of experience over the last couple of years. So I think when you start out a career, you have an idea of what success means to you, because success means very different things to different people. So for some people, success might be how many publications they've got after their name. Some people, it might just be how much they earn. And any of those measures are fine, but know what it is that's important to you, because then you can work towards achieving it. Make sure you get work-life balance right. I'm sure I'm the first person to say this, but you spend your life on work, so it's really important to find something that you have fun doing. New jobs are sunshine and flowers every day, but if you're not doing something you enjoy, you're wasting a huge part of your life. And one of the things I'm really passionate about, really love about my job, is that I'm 20 odd years, so 20 years into my career, but I still learn new things all the time, and that's really important to me. And those opportunities are there to help you move your career forward. So networking, you can be really good at what you do, but if nobody knows who you are, what you do, or your chances to develop your career become a lot more limited. So opportunities to network, both within your own, your own company or wherever it is you work, but also externally in things like a lot of the professional bodies like the Institute of Physics or the Institute of MIT. You do lots of network events now where you can go and sort of talk to people working in your field, and those are often a really good opportunity for career development. I think one of the things I obviously became quite right in my career is looking back. I think perhaps I'm a bit too risk averse, so taking calculated risks, doing things where you move outside your comfort zone. Those are often real opportunities to move your career on, change the direction of your career if you want to come along. So it's always worth being prepared to look out for the opportunities or to take those risks when they come along, because in the long term, it's usually worthwhile. And I think one thing is make sure you want to think outside of it, because make sure you've got something you enjoy doing, so that you can switch off from your chosen profession. Don't think it really matters what it is, it's music, but something that takes your mind off your work and keeps you fresh, and hopefully you're enthusiastic. So, I think that is my slide. So I think I can forward to any questions that I have.
So I know you explained at the beginning that you should have customers. I guess particularly for defense and like aerospace and things like that. But I wanted to know if there was like a specific sector that you mainly deal with, or if it's like all equal, like the type of customers that you get, and what they usually use the technology for.
Is that me personally or Thales?
Maybe both if you
Okay, yeah.
know both. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, right. So, Thales, I'll start with global to work down. So, globally, about half of what we use defence, the other half said is kind of, so an awful lot of what we do is kind of, you know, goes into the perspective, you know, defence departments for different countries. So if it comes down to the UK, probably about, I would say probably 2/3 of the work we do UK is for the UK Ministry of Defence. So those are by far our biggest customer, where, you know, we sell products that go into, you know, defence systems, be that air, maritime, land. So a big part of my work at the moment, to give a specific example, a big part of my work at the moment is the sonar system, which goes on the future Royal Navy submarines. So we supply that system to a company called BAE, who then deliver the entire submarine to into the Ministry of Defence to be deployed. Aside from defence, you know, in practice, the other work we do is still for government departments mostly. So we work a lot with the Cyber Security Centre at Cheltenham, which is all to do with sort of network, as in internet network security. So how do we encrypt data? You know, often at the kind of national security level. So if we transmit data around there, how do we make sure that adversaries can't exploit that data? And other things that we do, perhaps more intuitively, we do quite a lot of work, so say about digital identity. So a lot of the technology now behind when you get your passport, a lot of the underlying technology that is developed by Thales goes into those documents to make lines to forge and things like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
To answer the question.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Could I ask a follow-up?
Yeah, sure.
So one of the big reasons why I would opt to go for like a different company would just be the reasons that you were using the technology for. So following from that, I want to ask if you had any, maybe what's called, worries about like general morale of what the technology would be used for in the future. Because you say defense, that would mean against other countries, that would mean, you know, if you understand that, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is impossible for me to understand, because it's, you know,
it's up to the individual to reconcile those, the morality and the ethics of what we do. The reality is that what I work on at the moment, to be totally blunt, goes on to mix submarine. The purpose of submarine is to carry 64 nuclear warheads. If there's 64 nuclear warheads started overload, quite a lot of the world disappears, and that is a horrible thing to think about. But if you look at what's happened over the weekend, for me, it's quite obvious why that's needed. But everybody's got their own ethical, moral view of that, and I can't. It's not my job to convince you why you're wrong. Really, that it's the area to work in. I think the only thing I would say is that, to me, our entire way of life is underpinned by defence and security. And without that, I don't think the freedoms and abilities that we have, to me, I don't think they exist were it not for the defence and security that what we do provides. But that's just my own personal viewpoint, and I can fully empathise that some people might find that the whole, and that's entirely reasonable. But it's not for me to convince people that that's what they want.
Thank you, Harvey.
Can you give me examples from the tactical questions you asked?
Technical interview questions. Yeah. So I'm just trying to think of a good example. So I mean, one of the things that I quite like is I'll quite often ask my employee transforms, because it's quite, not because I don't expect them to necessarily be able to write down what a transform is, but you can take it in a number of directions. So if somebody can explain what a transform is and why it matters, you can actually take that to quite a number of different levels to kind of see how far you can go for their understanding. Sort of, perhaps pieces out. One of the other questions that we ask, well, as much now in the past, my ended question is around if you decide robot that's going to work on Mars, what might be some of the design considerations I think about? So that there's no right or wrong answer to that question, but it's quite interesting just to see if you can think through a fairly open-ended question in a reasonably logical, structured way, and if they think about what the key things that might be important. So in the set, the vast majority of questions that we ask in a technical interview, it's not like an exam where you get it right or you get it wrong. It's more to look at somebody's thought process to try and see if they've got that sort of understanding and if they can apply that to different things. So,
any way to prepare for this kind of questions?
Well, I'm not sure it is, because it's really, what we're really examining is what you're taught day to day and what you develop over years studying. So,
that probably something it's thinking.
yeah, I think just general. I think just general problem solving that you do as part of your studies, I think, is really good. Yeah, you can go online and look at things, our recent online to improve problem solving skills. But I think the really important point that I would make is that what differentiates you from the other 99% of the population is you can your problem type, you know, your problem solving skills that you learn studying maths and physics and engineering. And that is really what differentiates you from everybody else. And, you know, that's what makes you valuable to an employer. So don't lose sight of that.